mentioned earlier, we have changes in terms of immigration, and it might be good for us, actually. Let's expound on that sa ating American Dream.
This American Dream segment is brought to you by Aquino & Lowe Law Firm, answering your immigration questions.
Attorney Allison Aquino, one of our two resident immigration lawyers here on Kababayan LA. Thank you for joining us.
It's always my pleasure.
We're all smiles because some of the changes in immigration are actually good for us.
It's absolutely good, welcome news to start off the new year.
Yes, let us talk about this provisional waiver.
The Provisional Waiver program, which starts actually on March 4, will help individuals who are here in the United States who are ineligible to adjust status. And essentially the purpose of it is to reduce the length of time that people are separated from their families.
Yes, and this is good. You know, when we talk about provisional waivers, I remember talking about that not too long ago. How is that different from this particular one?
It's the same thing. This was the announcement that was made 1 year ago, announced by the president, and now is just the time that they are now implementing that program.
And this is, when you say March 4th, you can submit your application on March 4th, starting
Correct.
March 4th?
You can start submitting provisional waiver applications March 4. However, people need to move forward right away because in order to submit that application, you need to already have an approved relative petition.
And you also need to get your documents in order, right?
Absolutely.
Who qualifies for the provisional waiver?
So the people who benefit and who really need to pay attention are those who are immediate relatives and those who are essentially immediate relatives who are not eligible to adjust status in the United States. So essentially the individuals who are not eligible to adjust status are those who entered without inspection, so people who may have gone to Canada and then crossed the border.
Okay.
Individuals who entered with either a C1 crewman's visa or a D1 in transit visa, or any individuals who entered lawfully, say as a tourist, but for whatever reason has lost the evidence of how they lawfully entered the United States.
And these are the ones who qualify.
Correct.
But there are tricky terms here because there is immediate relative petition, and then there's such a thing as a qualifying relative. So how do we, what are the differences? Let's take a look at slide number 3 as Allison explains it. First is immediate relative.
Exactly.
Okay.
So individuals who are immediate relatives who are ineligible to adjust status can and should move forward. Immediate relatives are individuals who are a spouse of a U.S. citizen, a parent of a U.S. citizen, or a child, unmarried child under 21 of a U.S. citizen.
Okay, so that's immediate.
Correct.
It's pretty self-explanatory, right?
Right. Those are really close to you.
Right. What about qualifying relatives?
And so the difference is that when a person is an immediate relative who is ineligible to adjust, the main problem is in order to apply for your green card, you need to go overseas in order to obtain your green card.
Okay.
But if you've been living in the United States without any type of residency, as soon as you leave the U.S., you trigger either a 3 or more likely 10-year bar. And so in order to not be stuck in the Philippines for 10 years, people have to apply for an unlawful presence waiver.
Okay.
And the importance is that in order to be eligible for an unlawful presence waiver, you have to have a qualifying relative.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so unlike with immediate relatives, there's a smaller number of people who qualify as a qualifying relative.
Yes.
And so those are only people who have a parent who is a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, or a spouse who's a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. Unfortunately, people who only have a child who's a U.S. citizen or permanent resident do not have a qualifying relative.
Oh, okay. But there are other kinds of relief available to them, I would hope.
Well, no, unfortunately.
Oh,
and so that's, there might be. Okay, so I can't say categorically
case by case basis,
case by case.
Right.
But for the provisional waiver process, you have to have that qualifying relative. Otherwise, you cannot move forward with that provisional waiver.
And there is such a thing as proving hardship.
Exactly.
For this provisional waiver.
Right.
And there are, what do you call that, criteria for that? Yes. Okay.
Exactly. And so if an individual who is an immediate relative has a qualifying relative, then they apply for this unlawful presence waiver so that they're not stuck overseas for so long. And so factors that immigration takes a look at is pretty much anything and everything that you can think of to prove that you need to be here sooner than 10 years.
Okay, we have those in the slides right now: condition of health, length of residence. Do you have to satisfy all requirements? Because there's about, aside from this, there's another one that has so there's 8 points. They have to satisfy all or 1 or 2.
Well, the more that you can satisfy, certainly it makes for a stronger waiver application.
Okay. And what are the chances of the waivers being approved? Do you have any idea?
Well, it's certainly much better than when Manila was processing these applications.
Okay.
And so now, instead of processing the application with the U.S. Embassy in Manila, you process here in the United States while you are still here in the U.S. And certainly the odds, I would say, are much more significant. And the benefit is that you remain here with your family.
Exactly. That's such a relief. You don't have to go back to the Philippines and then be, in a limbo. You don't know where to go, what to do,
and you don't know
when
if you've been approved.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so under this program, you now wait here, wait until a decision. If it's approved, you know that when you finally leave the U.S., go back to the U.S. Embassy and process, you know that you will, in all likelihood, unless there's some, unusual circumstance, that you will get your visa probably within a very short period of time, and then come back and be with your family.
Thank you for explaining that to us. That is the reason why we need a lawyer to help us go through this. There are changes constantly, and we need lawyers on top of those and to be able to explain things to us as well. That's the number to call on the screen to schedule your consultation with Aquino and Low Law Firm. For now, thank you and more power to you.
Thank you, Janelle.
All right, more fun in the Philippines. People wanting to immigrate, but also balikbayans wanting to visit the Philippines. We'll talk about that when we return. Don't go away.